So we're going to take you to a few destinations in our economics interview tonight. The new King of England on the throne, but we look at our own messy palace politics here at home. We'll also look at economic opportunities emanating from the Africa Travel Indaba and other stories with SABC News economics editor Tshepo Mongoai. Good evening and welcome. So let's start then in the city of Johannesburg. And now, if we think about the coronation and these really, sober and serious promises made, to the country and to the crown, when we think of the responsibilities of the office bearer in chief here, the mayor of the city of Johannesburg, we've heard similar promises many times. And I think the theme that you want to pick up with is how do we make these promises a reality, and where does it leave the notion of unfunded budgets?
No, absolutely. I mean, in the city of Joburg, as is a tradition, we know this month later we should get the budget presentation by the MMC of Finance that would outline the plans that they have, and in terms of the revenue that they plan to collect over the medium term. But also outline how much do they have and how much they think they can be able to collect from the residents' services, with electricity being a main source of revenue for most municipalities. But the issue here is, of course, this is something that National Treasury has flagged for the longest time, that council continue to adopt unfunded budgets that they cannot be able to finance. And remember, when you come up with your revenue projection, sometimes it's over 3 years, you think that you would be able to increase your revenue in a particular area by so much percentage. And sometimes, because there are other pressures and you want to look good, they often put up a figure that is much higher, and they do not factor in several risks that may emerge along the way. In some instances, they're just not realistic. They think they will increase the collection from outstanding debt that is owed. And you find that they're just not able, and they've not been able to do that for the longest time. Yeah. But when they do their projections, they actually think they'll be able to increase that. And as a result, they end up with a deficit in their revenue that they know there's no other way of funding it, and they have to cut on some of the critical area in terms of service delivery that people so desperately need. But it's something that Treasury is aware of, and they've been trying to look at the Municipal Finance Act, as it is the key act that actually governs the whole budget process that involves municipalities, to see how they can avert this and better improve how municipalities raise and collect revenue.
Well, two things. The one is, when you overpromise, underdeliver, and you certainly don't have the money to back up the plans, it has a corrosive effect on trust from the voters, but also on what you actually see in the built environment. Things that simply were supposed to get fixed are not going to get fixed. And the second thing is, I think what you've just said allows our viewers to listen more critically at when budgets are tabled for, as you say, some of the areas where things might not necessarily have the money to match the commitments. Talking about commitments, let's talk about commitments from the Africa Travel Indaba. It's a huge undertaking. It's a huge gathering. And there's so much to extract from it, right? So we chatted a little bit about some of the themes with Richard Quest there from an outsider's perspective. But I want to talk about some of the opportunities inside. And you and I, in preparing for this conversation, were talking about travel guides and this need within the tour operator industry, because a lot of that conference is about travel and tourism, to be able to speak the languages of some of the visitors that are coming to the country, for example, German.
Yeah, in fact, I was speaking to someone who had visited South Africa recently from Germany, and he indicated that why don't we have versatile tour guide, people who can speak our language, because every time when you come to South Africa, we listen to the same anecdote, same people who, many of them are actually in their 60s, late 60s, 70s, and they've been around, but the way they tell the story of South Africa, it is so different, and sometimes it's embarrassing. And they actually...
Why? Is there a negative narrative?
Well, sometimes it is quite negative in the way that they portray South Africa, especially in certain parts of the country. And as a result, people feel that, I mean, don't they have other people in South Africa, much younger people, who can actually speak these languages? I mean, every time when you talk about tourism, we always think of people coming here, but people want to be spoken to in their own languages that they understand. And we need to maybe get more tour guides, young black people who must learn these languages. I mean, we're talking about China. China is a huge market, but somebody must speak Mandarin in order to be relevant to that particular market. I mean, before COVID, I think we had like 100,000 tourists from China, and there's scope for a huge opportunity to bring in those Chinese in South Africa. So it is something that we can actually, one, change the narrative about South Africa, and also start to be more inclusive in terms of how we tell the story of South Africa. And I think the power lies in speaking and learning those languages.
So much more to explore there. We're out of time, but speaking with indigenous or the languages of other countries, SMMEs, and of course opportunities for the African Continental Free Trade Agreement. We're going to leave it there, Tshepo, but how many languages do you speak?
I wish I could speak more.
Me how? Okay, leave it there. Tshepo Mongoai, thank you for giving us just a quick walk through some of the big themes on the economic desk this week.